Good afternoon. It's Graham Coath with another My Music, the second one of today. Dan was already asking me, am I the 125th person you've had on today? Not quite, but I think that's about how many podcasts I've done, music podcasts, since I started this, not that many moons ago. I'll be speaking to Dan about all things Daniel Takes a Train, book writing, maybe even lecturing and things like that as well, Dan?
If you want, yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's deep dive into your world of music and everything else in a few minutes' time. But first, 25 seconds of this.
I need to get going, Mel. See you later.
It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Licensing of music. Just because we played that little bit, those 25 seconds worth of music at the beginning of these, YouTube always tells me you can't make any money out of this. Well, that's fine because I don't want to make any money out of it anyway. Dan, thanks for joining me. Now, initially I thought I was going to talk to Paul from Daniel Takes a Train today because he was he was very proactive and he sent me some samples of the new music that you've been producing, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Really loved it, but
thanks.
What first of all, why did he sub you in? Not that I mind, but I'm just interested. Why did he sub you in? What's he doing today that's so important?
I didn't get the full story, and I didn't pry into his personal life, but what he did say was that he's done it before, and although he enjoyed it, he thought I could give maybe another angle to the band. Maybe I think he's told the story of the band. It's quite an interesting story. I mean, Paul is a bit of a one-off. He's different to me. He's got lots of celebrity stories. Unfortunately, I can't really compete with that. But I'm a songwriter. I'm a creative person. I'm a writer, and I lecture. I used to be a journalist, and I had an interesting career path. And now
let's talk about that. Let's talk about your career path because it does sound incredibly interesting. Where did you start then? Was it journalism first or
with music? You mean
with music? Right, music.
I think
first.
Well, I mean,
before anything else.
Probably. With the early days of the band, I was looking for a career but hadn't found anything. And then I didn't really find teaching till my early 20s. And then I lived abroad in Barcelona and taught English to foreign language students, but carried on doing music in my spare time. So that really set the course for teaching as my career. And when I became a journalist later, in order to pay the rent, pay the mortgage, I would go back to teaching.
Yeah.
I'm still pretty much in that situation. So I would say teaching is a great career, keeps you in the game, keeps the wolf from the door. But
so look,
you should never really let go of your dreams. So the dream in my late teens, was not fulfilled, but I found, writing instead. Writing is another great outlet to have.
Okay, so what was the dream when you were young then?
I think it was like a lot of people, just to kind of express yourself. I wasn't interested in getting married and having children, but I was interested in some sort of exposure, maybe to be on top of the pops even.
Yeah.
But obviously, when you get to your early 20s, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm basically a creative person. If I'm not writing songs, I'm writing music. And as I was telling you earlier, I'm now writing a book proposal, about music. So it allows you to, if you like, follow your instincts and indulge yourself a little. If you've lived a bit, you've got stories to tell. So this is what I'm doing now in conjunction with many other things. But no, I think writing is now very much part of my life and always will be.
How old were you when Daniel Takes a Train took off?
We were in our late teens, early 20s.
Right. Okay.
And we were lucky to be around at a time where there was a thriving music scene in London. At least there were lots of gig venues opening up, nightclubs. It was, what do they say about the 60s? If you remember the 60s, you weren't there. You could say the same thing about the 80s. I mean, we have great memories, some clear, not so clear. But we were lucky to play some amazing venues. We played at Ronnie Scott's, we played at the Limelight, the Astoria, and played with some great musicians. So it was a short time, and luckily we've all moved on from that.
Yeah, but that was,
we didn't hit the heights of Duran Duran and Culture Club and Tears for Fears, but
but you were living the dream, right? You were living the dream in a way. I mean, how in a way,
I think trying to live the dream might be
trying to live the dream.
Yeah, we're trying to live the dream.
How close do you think you came to the dream?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, there were a lot of nightclubs, a lot of venues, and obviously there are a lot of bands as well. So like today, there's a lot of competition. If you release a song today,
yeah,
there's thousands of other songs released on the same day. But I suppose we were talking earlier about how things were more tangible in the 80s. And I actually did go to EMI and Chrysalis and Virgin and sat in the office with our demo, and I watched the A&R guy listen to it and go, and then once he said, I think our first demo sounded a bit twee and Haircut 100-ish, and he said, we're looking for the next Killing Joke, don't you?
Right.
And rather than say, well, we're not going to do that, I should have said, no, we could do that as well, and I should have gone back to the band and said, they're looking for the next Killing Joke.
Let's just write something that sounds like Killing Joke. One song.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's not hard to just ramp it up a bit. So we were a bit full of ourselves. We kind of we thought we knew what everyone wanted. Of course,
yeah.
Like a lot of bands, we were probably a little step too far behind everything else.
Right. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, actually, and I think it's very much a thing of the time as well. But I think for a lot of us, being in bands then, it was kind of nice growing that kind of self-belief. But actually, maybe the self-belief, in a way, was the downfall as well. Because
exactly, yeah, you have to create an imaginary world that you are the ruler of, and then you have to convince other people to go along with it.
Yeah.
And then that's sort of like, I remember another incident where we auditioned for a drummer, and the drummer happened to be the son of a famous musician from the 50s or 60s, and we didn't let him in because the band we thought was uncool. But in retrospect, that's a terrible, terrible decision, because his dad could have financed the next album.
Yeah.
Who knows
his dad could have known people at record companies.
Exactly, he might have run a record company himself. But we thought we were so cool. Like, oh no, we can't possibly have him in the band.
Oh, I love stories like that. I'll be honest. When I was, I think 21, and just started working in radio, I met Take That. Right in the early days of Take That, and I was in a band at the time, and we were kind of indie pop, but quite cool, And if I'd have wanted to be anyone at that time, it would probably been Robert Smith, from The Cure, and and there I am, and I get introduced to. I'm just about to go on there and get introduced to Take That, and they're all there in their tight leather and whatever, and I'm like. Well, they're never going to make it, are they? It's just like, but that perception that you have at that age.
That's what drives you forward. That's what gets you out there. And it works for some people, but for some people it doesn't. And for us, it only worked up to a point. And then, after chasing too many, I don't know, we had too many costume changes, too many changes of not personnel, but just styles. And after a while you go, well, who are we? What are we doing? We're just chasing something else. And I think the big thing for us, that certainly the thing that for me broke it up, was the fact that dance music came along, luckily, around 1988. And, no one suddenly wanted to see guitar bands for a few years at least.
Well, talking about what we've just said and talking about guitar bands, I never thought I'd actually say this, but I once read something incredibly profound from Gene Simmons from Kiss. I know, I wouldn't have thought that either, but it's true. And actually, what he said, which I thought was an incredible statement, was that a lot of people are rock stars, but they don't actually realize that being a rock star isn't about being a rock star. Being a rock star is an attitude. And I think for a lot of people, there may have been a lot of us who went through. I mean, you were slightly more famous than I was, but I mean, went through that experience of being in the band, being signed, having a record out, etc. There's a lot of people in the history that have done that, but they never made it to that next level. And it can be really easy to get to the next point in your life and look back with some kind of regret, because should I have made that decision? Should I have made that decision? But actually, that attitude which you had in that first instance, which took you there, you can adopt that attitude in whatever it is that you do in life.
No, it's a very good point. Very good point. You are touching on something that, in a way, being in a band is a great training for life. I mean, when I was 14, I was ringing up promoters to get gigs, and you're running a small business. A band is a business, and with sometimes 4 or 5 members, and you've got to pay people, and you've got to be seen to be improving and making more money each time. And I think when that flattens out, that's the time to try something different. And it's also bands are about reinventing yourself. Look at Bowie or Madonna, or they constantly come up with different image changes. And I think, without really letting go of who they really are, that's a very complicated, very complex thing to do. Obviously, we got nowhere near their level of fame, but in terms of life, we always have to represent ourselves. I'm a writer, I'm a university lecturer, I'm a musician, and I do commercial writing as well as journalism. And then with all those different skill sets, I present a different face.
Yeah.
And that is a little bit like walking on stage with your guitar. You're not Dan, the writer who's just written 500 words for a local magazine. You're Dan, the rock star.
Exactly.
And you're the same. And we're all the same.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm saying is, do you feel like you can take some of that kind of experience that you had in the early days and that kind of the knowledge that you had, that belief, do you feel that you've taken that into the subsequent careers that you've had?
You mean the confidence? And
the confidence or the ability to think, do you know what, I can really crack this, and I can really do this well.
I think the role play aspect, I think I can relate to the idea that we have to present different faces at different times. And I think, the idea of almost being entertaining all the time. You have to create something. You can't just sit there twiddling your thumbs. For me, I have to come up with a new song, because I've just released one, and now I have to write another one.
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah. Did you find that when you started lecturing? I mean, my last role actually was involved with higher education and working with university lecturers, etc. I mean, it's an incredibly challenging area. in terms of, you know, that there's a measure now, you know, there's now a measure of engagement in terms of how effective the engagement is with
Tell
students.
me about it.
Yeah. So, you know, from that perspective, did that ever feel like, you know, I need to make sure that they're entertained?
Well, I think certainly you've touched on something there, because, you know, I was teaching English language to small groups of people or classes of 20, but as a university lecturer, I've gone to halls and spoken to hundreds of people, you know, and shown the slides, and that requires some experience in the entertainment industry. I mean, it is a form of entertainment, isn't it? I mean, unfortunately, we all have to entertain now, and maybe those days lugging my amps and, you know, carrying a guitar around London nightclubs was a formative training for that.
Oh, I think it probably was. There's a guy I know that runs a organization called Billionaires in Boxers, and he you know, he's got billionaires in his network who have made money out of podcasting, for example. And he talked at one of the events that I did, and he said, look, you know, everybody in the education field, they've got to realize what they're up against now. You know, people learn stuff on YouTube, right? And that is snippeted. It's, you know, short bursts of entertaining information getting across there, reinforced with great graphics and great music and everything else. You've got to relook at how you're presenting your information.
Absolutely, and then the students themselves will be used to a certain level of presentation and a certain level of excitement, and, you know, their minds might not be totally on watching one person just speaking. You know, they want all their senses to be engaged, and we've set a very high bar, I think.
So did you ever start any of your lectures? You can be honest now, but did you ever start any of your lectures by telling the story of storming the Brits? I mean, because that would certainly,
to be honest. I mean,
yeah, but the band storming the Brits, because, you know, that would do it for me. I mean, you know.
Well, maybe I missed a trick there, Graham.
Tell me about this book. Tell me about this book.
Well, I mean, but early stages, Graham. But I've been a music fan and a music maker for 4 decades now, and I was telling you earlier about a very formative experience of watching ABBA on the Eurovision Song Contest. I think it was 1974, and it was in the middle of the 3-day week, and I re-watched the video of it, and I was just fascinated by the state of the country, and how scaled down it was. It seemed like watching something going on in a village hall. And I suppose it had parallels with what's going on today, and the sort of inflation and poverty crisis. You know, these are difficult times, but my God, they were difficult times in 1974 as well. And people needed entertainment, and ABBA just kind of stepped into that little vacancy there. And
interestingly as well, I mean, you know, the title of the song, Waterloo, presumably we're talking about.
Yeah, and the conductor walks on. I don't know if you remember, but he's wearing a Napoleon outfit.
Yeah.
And he sort of walks on, and I think the commentator is going, "My God, it's Napoleon." So you get a sense, but it's quite controversial to. I mean, the French weren't actually in that contest. I think they had to pull out, but they would not have given it any points, would they?
No. But you're also talking about, you know, a battle. So and very famous battle as that. So I mean, what I mean is, you know, it was highly flamboyant as a performance. It was highly entertaining and all of that. But you know, there's a darker side to the song as well. You know, do you feel it was kind of a real reflection on society?
I think you have to take it in the context of the competition.
Yeah.
As you've touched on that, there's a dark theme going on and wrapped up in a sort of bubblegum pop rock and roll sound. And that is kind of everything else was on that show was not particularly memorable. A few ballads, I think, but I think obviously at that time people need cheering up, and as possibly they do now. But I don't know. Did you see the Eurovision Song Contest a couple of weeks ago? And
I caught, yeah. Well, I think we all caught it on catch up, even if we didn't actually catch it on the day, because of, it's certainly for the right reasons. It was political, yeah. This time around. What was your take?
My book is looking at formative moments in my life which have really reeled me into this love of music and making music. And I'm going to be looking at magazine articles or old tickets. I'm going to go through a box in my attic and again really indulge myself, but write about the things that really influence me.
Yeah.
And also explore why. I mean, I'm in my 50s, and why am I into music now? I should have got over it. I should now be, I don't know, I should be listening to gardening podcasts, or I should be going to National Trust properties. But I'm really excited by music. I'm excited by the new Wet Leg single than I am Love Will Tear Us Apart when it came out when I was a teenager. So
no, absolutely.
That sort of interest, that confuses me a little, Well,
it's interesting, and it's something we do a Friday live on LinkedIn, and often have a guest on talking about music from my sort of age, 50 upwards, and we quite often talk about that, the fact that we're so excited by new music, and we're so and also music really is far less necessarily pigeonholed in terms of particular people now than it was previously. I mean, growing up, my parents would never ever have listened to my music, and I wouldn't have listened to theirs in a way. Not that my parents really were into a lot of music, but the New Seekers just didn't really do it for me.
We have an interesting in our house. We obviously we share the same Spotify account, so my wife listens to, I might in a derogatory way say mum music, and then there's my music, which is a bit sort of indie, and then my daughter, she likes indie music. So you get these algorithms, and then they give you a, say, Discover Weekly playlist, and you're going, how did Take That get on there? It wasn't me. And but you're forced to listen to it because it's just on. And there's a sort of democracy to that, isn't there?
Yeah, no, there is a democracy to that, and there's a sort of, as you say, diplomatic curation of the music in a household now, compared with, once upon a time I owned a massive great stereo with massive great speakers, and that would be what anybody would listen to in the house at one point.
Because I think also it's in a good way, it's broken down all those, these are the albums you should listen to. You have to like this, or you have to like that. And the sort of, if you like, Q magazine mentality, where the top 50 albums. I've never listened to Nevermind before. I've no interest in listening to that, or half those albums I've just not.
No. But what you were saying a minute ago, you mentioned Wet Leg, and you say that you like that single, and of course that's a very young band.
I like the energy. I like the energy, and I don't know. There's something about it. It's not the best song in the world, but it's maybe the production.
I think it's different. I think that's the thing. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit edgy, and it's quite interesting as well. It's a different vocal delivery as well. But what I was going to say is, do you think we are the first generation coming through where that has changed? Because certainly growing up, I looked at my sort of parents and then grandparents, and you could go, that's beige, and then that's really beige, And I see people of my age who are grandfathers and whatever, and they're wearing hoodies and they're wearing jeans and they're listening to Wet Leg and whatever. That would never have been my grandparents. Never in a month of Sundays. Do you think
those people are the audience now? I mean, I went to see a band called Spiritualized last couple of weeks ago.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I would say most of the audience were, men and women, but definitely 40 plus. No, not okay. So they were quite big in the 90s. But they sold out the Roundhouse, which is a huge venue. I went to Divine Comedy with my daughter a few days earlier at the Palladium, and I would say the audience were older than me on the whole.
Yeah.
And they all look like university lecturers, because I know what university lecturers look like, and teachers. Anyway, that's beside the point. That is the market. I've not been to a Wet Leg gig, but I'm assuming there'd be a fair few of us at the back, nodding our heads.
No, I think so. Well, I'd be at the front, actually. I mean,
that's in the mosh pit.
Yeah. I scared my friend Andy. Hi, Andy.
Right.
If you're watching, you probably will be at some point today. Because we arrived and he kind of made a beeline for the back near the bar, and I was like, "No, we're going down there at the front."
Good on you.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, if you don't come out with bruises, it's not a gig. That's just the way I look at it. But no, I generally think that there's been that shift. I don't think that we kind of grow old into our music in the same way now. I think fashion, music, all of those things, I'm seeing people get older more disgracefully, which I think is a great thing, really. I think it's and maybe it's certainly to do with the way that work's changing as well. I mean, the last couple of years with the pandemic, I don't want to center too much about the last couple of years and COVID, but that has made an even bigger dent in that as well. The fact that people are not necessarily suit and tie anymore, and can almost work in whatever that they want to work in, and have more flexible in when they work, etc. I just think society as a whole is just opening up in terms of.
I mean, that feeds into what I'm exploring in this book, is the idea that you can't escape your misspent youth.
Yeah.
And because of digital media, like if I go on Twitter in the morning, I automatically see a picture of Debbie Harry.
Yeah.
Taken around 1970, because I used to have her poster on my wall. So it's not like I'm moving on, although I am listening to new music. At the same time, you have to absorb old stuff again. And I really don't want to, but it's inescapable because of the amount of media out there.
Yeah.
And because the media gets us because of our demographic, our age range.
Yeah.
He's a 55-year-old male living in London. Oh, he likes The Clash. And that's what will come up on my phone every morning.
Yeah.
Now that is just a very cynical repackaging of something I already know about.
I've asked it to other people in the past, but do you feel that there's almost too much music now? And not that there's always been a lot more music than anybody could absorb, but do you ever get the feeling that there's too much for you to absorb?
There's too much of everything. I mean, there are too many books, too many new releases, and I guess that is our challenge, is to see the good stuff, to find it.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring that back around to you as a songwriter. How does that then impact you as a songwriter, knowing that there is so much out there? Because it felt different. I feel it felt different to me, back in the 80s or whatever, writing stuff, in that you almost felt that you know, this you had to get new stuff out there because there wasn't enough. And which wasn't true. There was loads of music out there, but it felt like that. But now we are so surrounded by stuff. It's almost like there's saturation. When you go to write something,
that's interesting, because I know what you're saying, because now we have more knowledge. So we know, for example, on the Daniel Takes a Train Spotify page, we can see which are the best selling tracks. So, I mean, to be quite cynical, I'm writing a song now that sounds like our best-selling track, which is sort of a reggae-ish, clashy kind of specials kind of thing with some Eastern European instruments.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a formula that has done well. So, you know, if you can produce something like that, maybe even better. So we have this knowledge. Obviously, if you play gigs, you know what people dance to and you know what works. So there's a bit of instinct. But when we were younger, we just said, oh, I want to write this song, and you would just do it.
Yeah.
Whereas now you'd go, whoa, don't do that, do this. But we're not working in a sort of chart-based culture anymore. We don't have to sell more than, you know, the top acts. We don't have to compete with those acts anymore.
No,
we have our own audience.
How much more then now, even than before? How much more does the lyrical content actually really make the difference?
Well, because we're writing 3.5-minute pop songs, obviously the words do matter. They have to. I mean, I'm personally more prefer music to words, but I do think if you can chuck in a line or two that people remember. I think the last track we did, Paul did a rap, and not many bands like us have a rap segment. I mean, you're talking about your audience who is possibly has a low attention span, has probably on their phone, they've got other things going on. So this is the world we live in. You've got to grab that listener quickly. Yeah. And even when we're in the studio, you go, well, I personally like long intros, but the engineer would say, well, you know, cut 4 bars and go straight in. And that's against my instincts, but, you know, I'm happy to listen to the commercial pressures in order to reach a wider audience. All of us want to reach a wide audience. That's our goal.
Yeah.
We don't want to write a song that is listened to by your mum and 3 of your friends. There's no point in that.
Well, you sent me a couple of songs to listen to, or Paul did. Miracle Cure.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that as a title grabs you immediately. You know,
that's quite zeitgeisty, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
The people who've had 3 jabs like us, you know, we're believing in this, the science, if you like, and we trust in it. And at the same time, we live in a culture where people are having plastic surgery and trying to take quick fix remedies to feel better about themselves. And I suppose the song is kind of touching on that again, as much as you can in the 3-minute pop song. It's more about, you know, the zeitgeist, the mood. I have no real view on whether we should be taking the Miracle Cure, but you know, I've had COVID. Maybe you've had that. It does work. It doesn't stop you getting the disease, the illness.
No. And the other one was Bless the Week, which I mean is incredibly humanitarian.
Thank you. Well, that's you know, as someone who's lived with elderly parents and the vulnerable, without trying to sound too corny, I think it's just you know, a big clap for everyone who needs a bit more support.
Yeah. You see, and this is where I feel that there is a difference. This is where I feel that you have got a USP, if you like, and there is a cut above. All right, because I think if you're listening to these songs as a whole, both musically, because you're drawing on with experience on the past, but trying to make it work in the present, and you know, as you say, you're looking at the data now as well, so you can see what works and what doesn't work. So that's quite a new way of doing it. But also the lyrics do speak of wisdom. You know,
I'm so glad that we've matured over the years, because, you know, I don't want to go through what our song titles when we were 20, but I don't think there's any point in making music and not saying anything. But and as we are wiser, yeah, let's share some wisdom as much as you can. I said in the 3-minute pop song, but I mean, Bless the Week is, you know, we'll release it one day, and hopefully, you know, we had a song called My Town that slipped by, actually, but it was about you know,
which it shouldn't have.
Hey?
Which it shouldn't have, because it was a great song.
Yeah. So that's in a similar vein. It's about a sort of appreciation of our local towns and what they've become, sadly. It's not political at all. It's just observation.
Yeah, I think these little gems, these little nuggets of wisdom will find their home. And I totally believe in that. And
An
I
old
think
people's home, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. and when they do, I think you'll benefit from it. So it's been lovely talking to you. In terms of new music, when is any of this new music going to find its way out?
Yeah. Well, Bless the Week is going to be released later this year.
Yeah.
We've just got Miracle Cure out at the moment, and hopefully inspiration will strike and we'll return to the studio later this year.
Yeah, cool.
So songs in the pipeline.
And the book's in early stages yet. So
early stages, but I will keep you in the loop about that, because
yeah,
I think you'd be interested in that. And
well, yeah, I'd like to write the foreword for it. I think it sounds like it sounds like the kind of thing I'd love to write a foreword for. Incredibly interesting look through somebody's life via music, but not entirely about music. I think that's, you know,
it's more the why music? Why am I still listening to this stuff? Yeah. Why do I still have a guitar on my wall? Why do I have this amp in my corner? Why do I have a pile of LPs over there? As you said, it's probably not something our parents would have had in their home.
No,
you know, we are, but you know, there's got to be a power to that, and that's what I want to explore.
Yeah, I think there is. I honestly believe that there's kind of been I think there's been a change in the way that we feel empowered by music that perhaps the previous generation didn't, in a way. I'd love to know whether, for example, Live Aid turns up in that book. But for me, you know, that was an incredibly emotional and sort of seminal moment, because I don't believe, and you know, you're an intelligent man being a lecturer, I don't believe for 1 minute that we actually managed to achieve much at all in terms of Live Aid really on the ground, as they all found out later on. Bono and the rest of them realized that actually the only way to really impact change was a political change in terms of reducing world debt, etc., not just sending aid out to a country. But there was a real belief that we were changing the world at that moment, and it kind of started a generation of, you know, maybe coming out of all of that rubbish in the 70s as well, that this was, you know, there was going to be a different way of doing things.
It does seem very naive looking back, that these people like Sting and Bono and Bob Geldof, they did things that politicians couldn't do just by just getting up and doing it.
Yeah.
And that is the, if you like, the punk spirit that we all inherited, that, you know, can't play your instrument, but yeah, let's form a band anyway.
Yeah.
And that kind of carried on through the 80s, I think, with those people. And now we're in a world where, you know, no one seems to be able to, apart from Boris Johnson, is able to organise a piss up in a brewery. So, you know, there's a bit of a vacuum there, I think, for artists, musicians, whatever you want to call us, to change the world.
Yeah, I think there is. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Graham, a pleasure also.
I hope we've learned something. We always do. You know, what we've learned, we'll have to wait and see. It'll probably come up on the replay. But I hope people have enjoyed it, and stay in touch. I'd like to hear about your book when it's ready. Bye.
Cheers, Graham. Take care.
Bye.